committee meeting. Today is October 20th. And we'll do a roll call for attendance.
Present Katie Dugan.
Present Kathy Forrest.
Present Chris Peich.
Present Rob Casemeyer on Zoom.
And present Susan Franklin. So. Okay. So let's jump right in. First thing on the agenda, electric bus lease termination. Thumbs up.
We're good,
We got a
so
letter?
we sent it back. We're just waiting for their signature to come back, but we didn't really change anything, so we're accepting it as they drafted it.
Okay, which was, they're taking it back and we.
They're taking it back, we have no liabilities, so we do get that money back that we had talked about.
Yeah, wins.
Exactly. Right, so $34,000 check.
Back in the coffers.
That's great.
Do we have any remaining articles?
I always ask the question.
No,
because,
nothing was added.
Is there anything new?
There's nothing new.
That's going over the
Nothing
fence?
new.
That's the only reason it was on there was like if something, Michelle got that weird look on her face and said, actually, we just found out.
Yeah, no,
So,
there was, has anyone seen the final warrant though?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
It came in the mail, I think on Friday.
And we're just waiting to see those motions?
Yes.
So if you go online, a lot of them are up there.
The motions are,
Mhm.
wow.
And there was a change in the motion of the citizens petition.
Yeah.
For a different funding mechanism,
Free cash flow.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard that that was changed. So it went from being town budget, to cuts on the town budget side to free cash flow. There's still financial policies that don't necessarily support doing free cash flow for an operating expense that's not one time. There's pretty strict pecking order of like where the free cash flow needs to go. And so I think that'll be one of the debates at town meeting is whether that is within the financial policy, and frankly, it comes down to the town meeting can override financial policies if they want to on town floor, so. Just an interesting little factoid. I mean,
It was scary.
yeah, it was just really terrifying, but, yeah, I mean, town meeting.
I mean,
town-
that can't be a whole wide open bucket, can it be, or is it defined in some way? What can be done, or is it anything?
I literally think everything can be
Wow.
overridden. Much on town floor. No, I went and I looked, whether you could override your operating budget, and you can override your financial policies, and it basically says town meeting.
Can do anything it wants.
They could do anything
Yeah.
it wants.
Yep.
So, yeah, the ultimate democracy.
It is indeed.
But our choice is just to accept it now or not, right?
Well, we're talking about the citizens, well, we're specifically
Oh,
talking about the
okay.
citizens petition, yeah.
The Billington's really changed, everything else is status quo.
I will do a follow-up to Chris to make sure that he can make it to the meeting, next Monday. So just from a process perspective, I'll just be very direct. The motions have not always come in a timely manner. So ultimately, we vote on a warrant article, but the actual motion that happens at town meeting is much more detailed. So what we see in the warrant and what we vote on as we go through the process is basically just a summary. But then when we get to town meeting, there's always a motion which literally lays out like all the specific details, including funding sources, which most of the time we've cited that in our vote, but there's, in the case of annual town meeting, there's quite a bit of detail, especially when we're dealing with repurposed article dollars coming in. And there was a surprise at special town meeting in terms of how the warrant article was structured for MSBA vote last fall, and then this spring, there was more than one surprise in the motions. even though we had reviewed a draft, so from my personal perspective as a committee member, like, it's just good process for us to see the motions, make sure we understand them, and then if there's changes, get alerted to those changes, because ultimately that is our work. In terms of how it's being represented to the community.
Right.
So,
Right, and yeah. And it's much
Okay.
more comfortable to have that conversations about those things before we actually are seeing them.
Yeah.
At the meeting.
yeah, there's physically not a good way to get up and say, excuse me, I don't understand the motion on the article for my committee. Can you please explain? It's just like, it's really not a good look for the committee.
Yeah,
So we're trying to do that. So yeah, so that's the goal. It should be quick and easy on this one. There's not a lot of complicated, but it's more of a process thing as we go forward, and especially as we get into annual town meeting, the motion gets a little bit more involved. So that's that.
Okay,
Let's see,
they're not out there yet.
Okay.
Okay, update from the public safety working group.
Yes, so we had
I
our,
saw Mark up there for a second.
yeah,
I know, he went away.
Okay,
so we had our first meeting this morning at 9 AM. Glenn Pratt from the EOC is chairing it. Just for your own interest, Chief Quigley, Sergeant Reardon was there, Chief Dockery, Michelle, of course, was there. Mark is the liaison from the advisory committee. Oh, Richie Kincher was already there, also there. And then the citizens are Melissa Brown, Nate Spader, Will Ashton, Dan Tarpey, and Doug McGregor. And Paul Grady is the liaison from the select board. And Will, Paul, Dan, and Doug were not in attendance at this meeting. But we basically had a little discussion, a little bit of background, and Michelle gave everybody lots and lots of paperwork to review. And we talked about how we wanted to proceed. And what we really decided was we need to think a little bit more carefully about our communications plan for it, even while we're figuring out what the scope of the project is. And put together a communication plan that kind of goes for now, with our goal being that there would be a vote at the annual town meeting. Whether we can actually get the scoping done by then or not, it remains to be seen, but we want to put together a communication plan given that time horizon. There will not be any more forums. I think all the forums were canceled. But we're thinking about, there's Mark, but we're thinking about doing something at the town meeting, in order to try to solicit feedback from the town, not like within the town meeting, but like maybe a table outside of
Yeah.
the gymnasium. As well as maybe at that point, starting to put together some communications, not around the plan, but for people who aren't aware of what's going on in the current police station at Elm Street, giving them some anecdotes about what the issues are there, maybe some photos. So really starting to hammer home on the real need that there is. And soliciting.
Your polling idea?
Well, it was my polling idea. I thought it was Mark's.
It was a great idea.
Yeah.
Whoever it was, that was
Yeah.
a great idea.
And then Melissa had a good idea, which was to also do some mailers. Because right now, we're kind of relying a lot on Facebook and on people going to the government website. We're gonna have, the group will have its own Facebook page as well as its own website, so kind of making it a separate thing, really easy to get to, and thinking about how we can better communicate as we go. Because I think the consensus that everybody at the table was hearing from the town people was that, yes, we need a new police station. So we want to kind of use that and build on it to try to get the right police station. Did I miss anything?
No.
Michelle?
No,
Did I miss anything, Mark? You kind of came in a little bit late.
What about this 2 Elm component of it? So like obviously that's sort of like the part of the complaint was that it's like, it is sort of a 1-2 combo punch. in terms of the budget in total.
Yeah, I think, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because this was a really good point that you made, was that we need to incorporate Elm Street into whatever we put forward, but we need to be careful that we don't do the $10 million. You know, it's gonna be $10 million, and then 2 years from now, we say it's gonna be $20 million. So we have to kind of walk that line of saying, this is what we think it will be in the future, without like actually making it a
Committing to
commitment.
anything, yeah.
Yeah. But trying to have a really good number, like trying to get to a solid number so that
Absolutely.
there is no surprise, even if we don't commit to it, if we say it's gonna be X, that it, you know.
Right, and having a good conversation now that we are discussing them too, as, you know, together.
Yeah,
About really where some of the functionality will truly end up.
yeah.
And is it decided that 135 King Street, and I say that in quotes, because nothing is ever decided, that 135 King Street is going to be police only? Or are we still?
I think it's still a
Yeah.
conversation, but I think the group, correct me if I'm wrong, is looking at optionality at this point. What are options
Yeah.
A, B,
Yes.
C?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
That's
Yeah.
essentially right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, you know, another option might be just leave it as is, and then what's gonna happen if we do that, you know, like just try to give the town, these are all the different things that could happen.
Okay.
So
And-
is someone coming up with a comparison of what is non-compliant with 62 Elm?
So we have that,
Yeah.
that's in one of those documents,
Yeah.
we do have that. I don't, if you don't have that, I can load it to the OneDrive.
We have it on the
Yeah.
OneDrive.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's, there was an existing conditions report that was done for 135 King Street, and then a corollary was done for 62 Elm. So I'll send you the link, Rob, to the 62 Elm Street folder, but it's in that folder, and it,
Well, I read through the information. I guess it wasn't clear to me that that's what it was, that I didn't see something in column A that said this is a requirement and this is why it's non-compliant or compliant. That's what I thought would be was
So
going
I
to be
get it.
done.
Yep, okay, so
yeah. But we,
I'll
Okay.
take that away with the chief and we'll work on that. We'll break that
Okay.
down. And we'll have column A, this is like nice to haves, this is code requirements, this is
For Elm Street.
for Elm Street.
Okay,
For
yeah,
Elm Street.
Yep,
yeah,
Okay, thank you. I think that would be very
So-
helpful,
so
and I
we-
think it'll be helpful to talk to the town about.
we'll get that done.
Separate from that, Ralph talked about the last meeting I was at, not last week's meeting, but the meeting before, about our capacity as a review group versus as a active group. And what was the determination on that? As an active participant versus a review participant?
you mean his email, was that his email?
yeah, I think that you're referring to his email, right, where he was concerned about.
I
someone
wasn't
being-
at the last meeting. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, it was an email,
Yeah.
yeah. So the liaison format is one that's used by almost every public committee that I know in town, where you are liaising either with other committees, I was a liaison to master plan, as a
That
school
was when
committee
you were at
member.
school.
What? That's when I was on the school committee.
Right.
And so that liaison format, at least in my opinion, doesn't create a voting problem for Kathy down the road, or create a voting problem for the committee down the road. I mean, her job is really to bring back the information that she gets at the working group to the full committee.
Great.
And then we vote as a full committee. Like, she has no voting power. It's a working group, so there's no power at the working group level except to do the work. The voting power is at the committee level. So it's sort of a thankless task in some ways.
But I think also having as a standing committee here, the updates from the working group means that everybody here will be informed as things
Right.
move along.
Right, so whether it's working group or liaisons, generally, that's really the function.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it,
We'll
Kathy.
talk about that more.
Yeah.
Later on.
Yeah, so Kathy, if, and Michelle, like, as information, new information, this was obviously quite organizational, sort of flows in, like, I'm happy to throw it up on OneDrive, or we can talk about how to organize it so that we have obviously 100% visibility to sort of new stuff, but a lot of it at this point is rehashing where we've been
Yeah.
to figure out where we go.
Thank you.
That's great. No, thank you for doing that. Big lift.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is about communication policies for members of capital budget, and this is kind of coming out of some of the activity on Facebook where people get into conversations, and I think so far, none of us have really participated. We've read a lot of the conversations, but we're not responding. And I think our feeling is that if we are gonna respond, we want a single voice, and we don't wanna have multiple capital budget committee meetings, members out there talking, one, because of,
Quorum.
quorum, we don't wanna have quorum, people conversing out there, but also, we just wanna have, well, it's not really the way we want to communicate as a committee. We want to communicate more, together, and discuss with one another how maybe we want to respond, but just willy-nilly filling off responses. So I respect and appreciate that everybody has not done that to date. But there's a temptation sometimes
There is definitely.
to respond.
You're safe with me. I'm not on social media.
But even in addition to social media, people will ask us our opinion of the public safety building, even if we're not on social media.
And that's your opinion.
That's your opinion as a resident?
Okay.
No, I mean, everyone is able to individually represent their opinion. It just,
Mhm.
it's, you're never representing the committee's opinion,
Okay.
unless it's a vote, but unless it's
Sure.
vote. And so, you're right, I mean, people will ask, now that they know you're on capital budget, are certainly gonna ask, like, hey, I haven't been paying any attention, can you give me the
Mhm.
cliff notes and what do you think?
Mhm.
And that you're allowed to give as, an individual, and when I was on school committee and there was a need to respond to something on a broader perspective, generally the chair drafted something, the committee inputted in a public meeting, and then it went out. There's unfortunately, as a public body, there's no way for us to go behind the scenes and sort of coordinate a message. It's like either we delegate the chair to go and communicate on behalf of the board, or the chair drafts something, the board discusses, and then it gets put out
Yeah.
publicly. So it is awkward, but it's meant to be public. But we can, as a committee, if we ever got to a point where we thought we needed to put out a statement as it
Okay.
relates to public safety or an issue, we can do that.
Look at that.
We can work
In
with
the
that.
meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Anyone else have any other comments on this topic? Okay. So we're going to be reviewing the roll forward and of the stabilization fund as well as the roads and sidewalk stabilization fund. Yeah, so that is on the OneDrive.
So, and I gave copies to people in the room, it just depending on what was easier for people to follow along with. Maybe we start with roads and sidewalks, because it's pretty easy conversation. There's 3 capital stabilization funds, the schools, which we reviewed previously when we were talking about the Joseph Osgood roof repair. There's roads and sidewalks, and then there's the biggie, which is capital stabilization. Roads and sidewalks is a new creation as a special town meeting 2023. That is funded through an annual debt override in the tax levy. So that's something that the select board votes every fiscal year, and it gets put into the overall tax appropriations or tax levy of the town. And, you know, if you look back historically at capital budget, you'll see that roads and sidewalks were dealt with in a whole bunch of different ways. It was a little bit helter-skelter, and it was a little bit like if we had some extra money in any given year, we throw it at roads and sidewalks. The best thing that the town did, and this has existed for about a decade, was there is a 20-year roads and sidewalks plan. So we have inventoried and we have status of every single public way in town. And there's a plan as to, when they're going to get redone.
And that plan is also very useful to other departments for making decisions about doing things that affect the roads.
Yes, cutting it up for the sewer, cutting it up for water, all of those things. So the plan of like what needed to get paved was always there. We just didn't always have funding to do everything we needed. Now there's two funding sources. There's the stabilization fund, and we do get state money through chapter 90. The chapter 90 money, Michelle, is 500, no, not even 350.
No, it's closer to 300.
300, okay. So 300,000 a year coming in from the states, which is why we could never sort of keep pace with, I mean, if a mile costs 150,000 or something like that,
That's been going out.
yeah, it doesn't, you don't keep pace with the public ways. So long story short, there was sort of, when the roads and sidewalks fund was put together, it was meant to do two things. One, really ensure that between the incremental debt override money that was going in, plus the chapter 90 money, that we're going to be able to keep pace with our 20-year plan. And the second benefit to our committee was that we were no longer going to have to do appropriations for roads and sidewalks out of capital stabilization. So that was good news to us. The other thing that also happened is that there was a roads and sidewalks committee that was formed that basically has oversight with Brian Joyce on that 20-year plan. Plus they are the public body that is also taking input around areas that could use additional connectivity like sidewalks. So their job every fall is to go through and work with Brian on the 20-year plan, plus their input, public input, and come up with a roads and sidewalks plan for the next fiscal year. And what you're looking at right now is a piece of the funding. So this is only the stabilization fund money, but then there's also the chapter 90 money that comes in annually. So in total, there's like, call it $1 million, $1.1 million in total funding that's available every year.
So for FY26, we've got 418, 811, 58.
That's the chapter 90.
Yep.
Okay. So the roll forward here is really only good news in that we had a balance at the beginning from the first appropriation that was made at a special town meeting. There's been an annual appropriation out in fiscal 24, in fiscal 25, it was $900,000. In fiscal 26, you'll see in the warrant that was done at last annual town meeting, there's an appropriation out of $700,000. So they're ending with a balance. They're going to, be making another round of recommendations for the next fiscal year. We will see those recommendations as part of our annual cycle, but our job is generally to know it exists, know what the balance is, a little bit like water and sewer in terms of how we approach this, is that there's been another committee that sort of vets the details, and our job is sort of a second review plus confirming the funding sources for it. So the good news is that the funding has been well managed. If you contrast that to, schools, obviously the Joseph Osgood roof repair projects are swamped that stabilization fund a little bit, in that our tax override numbers don't keep pace with a $5.9 million project, especially since we had right out of the bat to spend roughly $2 million against the fire alarm and some of the work that needed to get done in terms of the feasibility for the roof itself. So we sort of had expenditures.
Big ones right from the get-go.
Yeah, big ones right from the get-go. But it does prove the usefulness of these stabilization funds, because we wouldn't have been able to tackle
Right.
any of those projects, let alone a big project like Osgood, even if it's going to require us having a little bit of fiscal discipline for another year to sort of get it back to a positive growing
Right.
balance for the next project. So that's roads and sidewalks. Questions?
Just a minor comment. I hope
Yeah.
that the Roads and Sidewalks Committee travels on Beechwood near where it joins South Main, because it's a mess up there.
They're repaving
Yeah.
Beechwood.
Yeah,
Down at
the-
Beechwood on the other side of 3A,
no. Says
On
here,
on
Norman
on the South Main side of 3A, unless it's been done in the last week or so.
is
Yeah.
There's definitely, I was down on my bike a week ago and there's definitely repaving doing, because I was.
Oh, it could be in process, could be.
Yeah,
Rob, I think it's been done, actually.
Oh, great, that's great. I tell you, they're very efficient, these people.
Yeah, it's, yeah, I mean, I think there were, what, a total of there were 7 projects that cost us 1.3 million. I don't, the cumulative amount of roadway is like shockingly little.
Yeah.
But, we do chunk away at it.
Yep.
Good. So that's roads and sidewalks. The next one is the capital stabilization fund itself. And I think I'm gonna start on the summary tab, and then we can get into the detail. And this is an inherited Excel file, so if you look at it in Excel, there's on the detailed tab, there's like at points like 300 rows hidden. You are welcome to expand them. There's a lot of historical detail in there that goes back to 2008, which is helpful. But at the end of the day, we're sort of using this as a forward-looking tool. So, you know, maybe someday in the future, we figure out a way to clean this up further. But for now, we're hiding a lot of rows on purpose, because it just is historical detail. It's saved versus useful information to us going forward. So, if you're looking at the top page, which is just the summary, this is what our accountant is starting with, which is the beginning balance in the fund. So if you just look at the fiscal 25 column, we had a beginning balance at the beginning of fiscal 25 of that 1.479 million. The sources to the capital stabilization are funding at annual town meeting, which is that $2,096,000. Which through the hard work of Susan and prior committees is now getting a steady increase of 2.5%. Historically, it was a number that was much more opaque and heavily negotiated, but now we can, I'll put it in quotes, but I think we can pretty much count on a 2.5% increase coming in at annual town meeting, unless there's a significant change in the select board view on this. So we have the funding coming in at annual town meeting, which is increasing at 2.5%. It was at, that 2 million and change. We're now for fiscal 27, we're projecting that 2.199 million. The other funding source is from free cash flow at special town meeting, and this is an area that is still highly variable. Last year, we started out at 50,000 and we went several times and put our hands out and like asked politely that that wasn't sufficient funding. We knew town hall renovations were coming and we got increased from 50 to 100,000. This year, we're getting nothing at special town meeting. If you look back in the history, the previous tab, it's ranged from 750,000 to, 100,000 to nothing. So there's been a lot of variability in terms of what capital stabilization gets in terms of additional appropriations at special town meeting.
And what is that dependent on? Just the specific projects that need additional funding, or these are just general increases that we add?
Well, my personal opinion is it's sort of lack of a policy view on free cash flow. We have a free cash flow policy. And that free cash flow policy does spell out broad categories that free cash flow can go into. So it can go into stabilization funds. It can cover one-time expenses are sort of the two biggies. And
So if you have a lot of one-time expenses.
yeah, one-time
then you limit
expenses
how much you
and
can-
unforeseen, extraordinary, and emergency events. But it's generally meant to first deal with replenishing stabilization funds, supporting stabilization funds, one-time expenses, which do, to Susan's point, fluctuate, and then emergencies. Wearing my other hat for OPEB, one of the things that we did do was put in place a funding policy that we worked with the select board on, an advisory that said, we need funding for OPEB and we wanted the town to commit to a certain amount every single year. And so our funding source is either annual town meeting or free cash flow. And so we have sort of a committed number that comes solely out of free cash flow. In the case of capital, we obviously have a committed number like the 2.1 million. But as I look forward for this committee and we talk about things like 62 Elm Street coming out of potentially capital stabilization, there's no room left. And so the question is, is there room for a discussion with the town, with the select board about committing a fixed percentage of free cash flow that sort of tops us up and can build towards a balance that's used for those inconveniently sized projects. Like, we know we have 2 million every year to deal with like the regular replenishment. We know if it's a big project like 10 to 20 million, we're going to go for debt override. But then we have this inconveniently sized project of like $3 to $5 million that doesn't fit into capital stabilization, and nobody wants to support a debt override for that.
So this is kind of what came out of one of our meetings when we talked about the long-term range planning group coming back together again and updating the 10-year plan, which is underway. We have our second meeting at the end of this month, but that will help with what you're talking about to get the town to really look at what we need to do in order to properly fund our committee, so that we can have a better idea on how do we address these long-term plans and when can we actually absorb them into our budget.
So the short answer is that we're not underfunded right now. Like, I think if you look back a decade ago, like literally there was $1 million coming into capital stabilization every year. Like, we are not underfunded, but we're also not funded in a way that we can tackle those
Large projects.
the larger projects, for sure. And so that, that free cash flow is definitely one of those mechanisms that we could use to build that balance. I mean, I think, to be honest, the town doesn't like to overcommit the free cash flow number, because like once it goes into capital stabilization, it's not coming back out. So like by keeping it in an undesignated fund balance, which is basically unused free cash flow, they've got the ultimate flexibility, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's also hard for us when we sit here and think about those larger projects. We're like, we don't see how we're gonna get to yes on that. So But yes, so last year we saw 100,000 come out of free cash flow into the capital stabilization. This year, it's nothing. The free cash flow for the town was 1.2 million and change, of which $600,000 is being appropriated at special town meeting to OPEB, one-time expenses. So there's really only $600,000 left in this year's free cash flow. And we have a citizens petition that's looking to take another half of that if they were to succeed. Which is 1.2 million, just as perspective, is a relatively low free cash flow. It's the lowest that we've seen since 2018, and it's low at 1.2 million because we had to fund $839,000 in school deficits at the end of last year. And this year, because there are some accounts at the schools and other that are in deficit, we also have to escrow free cash flow because we can't have negative accounts in town. We basically have to match free cash flow against negative balanced accounts. And once they go positive, we can release it. But that's the 1.2 million is a low number for us, which is part of the reason why why we're not getting anything this year. It's not surprising that the answer was zero. But in terms of other sources, just on the summary, repurposed articles is the other one, which is this document that Michelle handed out, which is all of the old appropriations. And Rob, we'll get a copy of this to you, but basically what this is all the old appropriations that have happened, going back, as far as, God knows, some of them are like back to 2013, if you look hard enough.
Yeah, we go through this process annually. So we did a very good job of it last year.
Yeah.
What did we get? Over 300,000?
350,000?
350,000 of repurposed monies. So we do the same thing. See what we find. Then the sofa cushions, as Kayla said.
Exactly. Changing the sofa cushions. Yeah, and the 34,000 from the electric bus is another example. Like it's no longer an active project, so we can close it out and the funds come back to capital stabilization for new projects. So we'll just try and add to that $34,000 balance. And Michelle, maybe we'll all take a look at this and we can talk about it in more detail at next week's meeting to sort of see if we can identify areas. And I'm sure you'll have some thoughts too, in terms of like what's possible.
I've already looked at some
Okay.
that I know we can.
So the 350,000 from last year is already out of there, and cleared out of there.
It's been cleared out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So the 350,000 got cleared out, went into capital stabilization, and if you were to look at the motions for last year's funding, like part of that was part of the funding for last year's appropriations was based on that $350,000 basically coming in and going back out to new projects.
Right, okay, yeah,
So, I mean, if we don't.
but it didn't reduce the 2 million from the town, it simply was used for other projects.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
all right,
Yeah, so this is like something that we can do to self-replenish our fund, which is.
Yeah.
Because once it goes into a project account in account 32, it's trapped.
Yeah.
It would sit there, I mean, not that it would sit there forever, the town accountant would come around and say like, hey, this has been sitting there for a decade, but. We sort of activate that process to say to town departments, have you completed the project? If so, can we repurpose? And in some cases, they're like, we're waiting for an invoice or it's not totally completed or whatever the reason is. There are reasons why some of them linger, but it's definitely an active process. We do get interest earned on our account, so that's around 75 to 85,000 a year in terms of interest income. Then on the uses, on the debit side, we have debt service payments, which will go into detail of like exactly what those obligations are under the capital stabilization on the next tab. And then we get to the expenditures at actual annual town meeting. So, you can kind of see that we've had expenditures that are around $2 million at annual town meeting, and then at special town meeting, we generally don't tackle those, but last year there were patrol rifles, and there was a reason why we were able to do that. And then obviously we had the trench screening conversation this year. But that's sort of the more emergent stuff that wasn't anticipated as part of the broader budget cycle. So if you sort of look at the FY27 column, our beginning balance on July 1st is looking like it's going to be 1.2 million. And again, there's some assumptions in here. Like the interest expense it's only through in the 26 column through the first quarter. I mean, this is a estimate of where fiscal 27 is looking. And the reason we do this now is that we sort of try and understand what kind of budget do we have to work with in terms of appropriation. So we're thinking that we're going to start fiscal 27 at 1.2 million. If we get a 2.5% increase over last year's appropriation at annual town meeting, that'll get to the 2.199 million. We've got repurposed articles. Hopefully that'll come up from the 34,000, which is just the electric bus lease right now. We've got estimated debt service payments, and this is another assumption we can talk about on the next page. That's existing debt service payments of 121,000. Plus, we have to make an assumption around what town hall is going to look like. And we'll walk you through what we learned from Linda when Susan and I met with her, just to kind of get some numbers for the team here. But we took the max scenario. So that 539,000 is basically the worst case scenario in terms of the town hall. And then you kind of like plug to say, you know, what could we spend? And historically, the committee has always kept about $1 million balance in capital stabilization. Our stabilization fund, you know, theoretically could be spent down to zero, but our fund, along with general stabilization and some of the other stabilization funds like roads and sidewalks, all get accounted for in our financial policy. So like there's a certain level of stabilization fund balances that the town likes to keep in order to have financial policies and have good standing with credit rating agencies. So while theoretically we could spend down to zero on the town side, they're sort of they're counting on us having a positive
Like $1 million.
like $1 million. Exactly. So all that being said, if we were to sort of look at what we have for this upcoming budget cycle, it's looking to be like $1.8 million, and that's with a very conservative view in terms of town hall debt service, and you know, no upside in terms of, you know, additional repurposed articles right now.
How do we, or how does the town decide whether they're going to use debt for a project? Is it just the amount, if it's too big for 1 year capital budget?
That's one of the decisions that we
It's not
make.
all in the vacuum, yeah.
Okay.
We participate in that because it hits our budget.
But you're generally right, like you know, as an example, the ladder truck, which is likely gonna be a point of conversation this fiscal cycle, is a $5 million project. There's no way that we could do it out of a $1.8 million budget, so we're gonna have to bond it.
Yeah.
And that's where if you go to the detailed tab now, you'll see sort of what the active
And this is this sheet here, Katie?
yes, that one,
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Payments that we have.
So the top, there's really not much new information on the sources on this tab, but what there is in terms of new information is under the uses section, which is where it lays out all of the existing bond obligations. And you can kind of see, to your question, Kathy, of like what's been bonded before. And Susan, you can talk more as to like what the strategy has been historically.
Well, the strategy historically has always been on the larger, longer term projects, you know, that we would bond. and less on smaller acquisitions, like, for example, the Ford truck that's on here. Philosophically, we try not to put, those types of things, bond those types of things. We must have had a reason at that point in time, I don't recall what it was that we did that, but we try not to bond the smaller things. And
It may have been that you were doing like a couple
they
things
may
there,
have,
yeah.
they may have put them together under one bonding event.
Yeah.
And it may have just also been that time, we just had many more projects that were in dire need of getting done, and we didn't have adequate cash. So we bonded it. Some people, some prior chairs, the chair before me, for example, really disliked debt, so he was, as often as possible, use cash, but we're just coming into a cycle right now as a town where we don't have that luxury. So, we have to look at debt. And the good news is we're also at an inflection point where we have a lot of roll-off occurring in 2026, which is giving us, some bandwidth there. But the town hall, bonding, which is being structured right now, will be coming online in fiscal 27. So we kind of roll ourselves back up again.
And the Border Street Bridge, the ones at the bottom, Border Street Bridge and the tree fund relief, which are in fiscal year 26, so those were already approved by the capital budget committee. And this is just the first year. of paying them. Okay.
Right, and so when we met with Linda, she was telling us, different scenarios that they're looking at for the town hall, whether it be, level payments versus a sort of a declining payment schedule over the life. They're looking at a 10-year bond right now as the likely bond. But they're also determining whether it makes sense to combine town hall with the water department. Is it this much?
I think it is, it's like the sludge pools, the 1.2 million in sludge pools.
So they're talking to our consultants about what they believe the best plan to be, but what we do know is town hall is going to happen.
Yeah.
So that's why we put the most expensive scenario in the budget right now. And we'll adjust it when we know.
And when the town goes out to bond, they often package it together, so they'll package the capital stabilization's commitment against town hall with water projects, with other things. The only project that will hit our stabilization fund is the one that we've agreed to fund, but they package them together because they can get often lower rates, better rates on the overall issuance, even though it's tiered or laddered with a specific bond against just the town hall or a bond just against the water. So they do it for packaging. But the reality is, in terms of how it's gonna financially hit us, is just the commitment that we've made, which is for the 3.88 million. So the two.
A lot of what these hidden lines are all about.
Yes, exactly. So if you ever wanted to.
I wanted to see some of the other ones that don't hit the fund.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, do we have a guideline from the tax people or the bond people that says how much of the uses should be financed, should be done by our own cash versus how much, in other words, how much debt can we go to use as financing before our credit rating changes and the amount of interest we pay have to go up? Do we have guidance from him or her?
Not from that particular party on that. No, we do not.
I think.
Do we have from another party?
We can get it, I guess. The reality is that the town is relatively under leveraged at this point. Like, we are not an over leveraged community, so there isn't a risk of our decisions tipping the town one way or another.
No, it would be nice to know how under leveraged we are, that's all.
Okay.
You can chime in if you know.
I don't know.
Okay.
All I keep hearing is, we have
plenty of borrowing capacity.
We have oodles of borrowing
Well, they can
capacity,
carry,
we
but I
just
don't
don't
have
have the commitment.
No, no, that's
Wanna
that's
work on that
fine,
now?
that's
Yeah.
fine.
I will get that, yeah.
But in terms of there's two columns that are sort of, or it's two rows that are sort of in a peach color, and those are the two scenarios that that Linda Cole, who is a town treasurer collector, showed us. One is what I labeled as alternative A, which is level principal, which is that's 10 years of bonding with equal principal for the 3.88 million. It's at a coupon of 3.5%, which is a good rate. And she thinks it's realistic based on our historical and what Hilltop, who is our bond counsel, is telling us. And the other scenario is an alternate B, which is level debt, which has more equal payments. The difference between the two is with the level principal, the sum total of the, principal plus interest is 40,000 lower than if you do it as a level debt. So we could, if we wanted to or needed to, free up a difference between the 529 and the 469, we could free up a little bit of capital if we needed it for some reason as a release valve. Historically, the town has done level debt, not level principal. We just put in again, the most conservative scenario for our planning purposes right now. And Linda did say that the work on the project is moving along, but it's not necessarily going to hit capital stabilization as quickly as we're showing here. Like this again is probably the worst case scenario, that there's all $3.8 million gets bonded and spent at the beginning of fiscal 27.
Which doesn't match the plan.
So
Worst case scenario is the best way to look at it.
So in terms of like our planning purposes, Susan and I were sort of thinking like, let's just keep the worst case scenario number is, and we can continue to get town hall updates in terms of like what's actually getting done, the pace of all the components of that project, and we'll know much more come the spring as to what the actual bonding outlook is gonna look. But for our purposes, that's too late because we're gonna be approving projects before we know what's gonna be bonded. So we have to sort of assume the worst and, we'll deal from there. So that's really the roll forward conversation. There's the only other thing I would say is that, this spreadsheet, as I alluded to, it's been handed down over a number of years. That means that not only have multiple capital budgets touched it, we've had like 3 finance directors and multiple town accountants. And so you'll see that as an example in fiscal 20, there's some blanks. And in fiscal 24, it was a big blank because we were in between finance directors, and there was definitely the old finance director had a different point of view as to how some of the debt service should be treated relative to capital stabilization. So the blank is what it is. And going forward, the good news is that the way we did it in fiscal 25 and beyond matches with 23 and before. It's just 24 is a little bit of a anomaly in terms of like the accounting approach that was taken. So that's the roll forward.
Okay, so everybody, now when we're actually looking at it, we'll be looking at it a lot as we look at projects and decide to vote. Always, putting them in here so we can see like where are we in the tally. So it's good that everybody has familiarity with how it is.
Yeah, but if you're asked about how much money we have to spend next year, it's $1.8 million-ish. Is sort of the answer. The other thing that I did last week was I updated a spreadsheet that has all of the historical, not all, but a large chunk of the historical appropriations from capital stabilization. So that was, the spreadsheet is like it says all capital stabilization and free cash flow history. So that has basically by department, by town meeting, whether it's annual or special, all of the appropriations. So it's kind of a helpful spreadsheet, like, for example, if you were to search fire engine, or, you could see when the last fire engine was and how much it was. I did dig out some of the data that's buried in the spreadsheet we just reviewed that it goes back as far as 2008. So it just electronically allows us to search a little bit. But that's just more for deep background on this committee than necessarily something that we'll be using a lot.
When we were talking about the school buses, there is a discussion that annual lease payment comes out of this.
Yes.
So that comes out of the 1.8 million.
Yep.
So, and it's about 200,000.
Yeah.
Right, so we really only have 1.6 million.
Yeah, I mean, and there's other leases too, like,
Okay.
like,
There's computer.
there's computer leases, there's what we call them reoccurring
Yeah.
expenses. So you're right, when you start taking off committed leases, reoccurring, like we always know we're gonna have a police car or two that we're replacing. We've committed to doing a series of furniture replacements at the schools. It's been sort of a reoccurring number. We're not committed by lease, but as a program, we've sort of said to them, you're right, like we shouldn't just wait another 20 years and expect all the desks to be standing, like we have to sort of.
Yeah.
So there are reoccurring expenses. So when you whittle it down in terms of like what's
Yeah.
really available for new projects, it's definitely, it's probably $1 million or less when you start pulling all that stuff off.
And some of the signs as to why, with leases and on some of these items, you're from the corporate world and you're dealing with short-lived assets that, become obsolete very quickly, and we don't want to own them.
Yeah.
So it gives us the opportunity to spread those payments out.
Yeah.
And with the bus lease, we get service, we get maintenance services that we didn't previously get, and we used to buy them. Well, we got them, but we paid a lot for it.
Yeah, and the reality, and when we looked at this way back when, there was, after you get past year 5, the maintenance expenses start to escalate, and by year 10, it's like an ugly mess. And so if you think about like the really meaningful life of a bus being the first 10 years, we have a 10 bus fleet, you're basically buying a $200,000 to a $300,000 asset every single year, or you could lease them and have new buses, low maintenance, fewer breakdowns. So that's became a lot of the discussion. So that was part of the reason to go with a lease strategy, was that you were either buying a bus every year or you were leasing a fleet. So, but it takes a lot of money off the top. For sure.
And there have been discussions on occasion, like, will there ever be a time when some of these things could get absorbed into an operating budget, but we just haven't gotten to that point yet where it's feasible.
Yeah.
Are we on?
Yeah.
Next steps ATM?
Yeah.
Do you want to start talking about
Yeah.
something going out there to collect these?
Yeah, so we sent out a request to all the department heads to collect all their annual town meeting requests. We put almost an artificial date of October 12th, hoping that they'd get it to us by November 15th. Usually what we do.
Smart.
We have some department heads, harbor master, we received police. We received a note from the school saying that the school committee is gonna vote on theirs November 5th, so we'll get this shortly thereafter.
Okay.
We have. I uploaded another one, so the requests themselves are in your OneDrive, the ones that I've received so far.
Mm-hmm.
I have not compiled the 10-year plan based on everything that I've seen so far, and I won't do that until I receive everybody's.
Right.
But I think you'll see the 10-year plan is going to show what's been funded in prior years, what's been asked and what's been actually funded, and then moving forward, what they're looking for the next 10 years. So that data is coming in, and probably by mid-November, we'll have everything. And you can start voting, or that will be time for your next item, which will be liaison meetings to start talking about those requests.
So what we've done in the past is that as they come in, we schedule the ones we have, we review them, but we usually hold our voting in most cases, until the end, when we've heard all of the requests.
And there's usually a period of scrubbing, scrubbing's the wrong word, but like improving the quality of the materials that come in. Like, if you look at the police submission, it's very tight. It's his budget submissions tend to follow a pattern. So he's got like a good template that he uses year in, year out. And it's, you know, he knows generally what information we're looking for. So it's a pretty solid package. There are other departments where it's like, it's a nice PDF that has like a top page, it has pictures, it has the detail. That's sort of the best case scenario. There are other departments where the information is not as well organized. There are sort of gaps in information and data. And so historically, that's where the liaisons have played a role in terms of like reviewing what's coming in and saying, hold on, like there seems to be some gaps. Can we fill that in? And so we tend to schedule the meetings in the departments based on where they are in terms of getting to a complete package, because it's, if we schedule it too soon and the information is too thin, we end out spending a lot of cycles asking for follow-ups and
Right,
having
they
tough
spend a lot of time in front of us, and we spend a lot of time
chasing.
chasing and talking about things that we don't really have adequate information to really discuss, so. That is really why we like to have the liaisons out there helping, you know, with the different departments, and we know what we need. So we help them make sure that they provide it. And police is police, I've been on this committee a long time. I remember when police didn't have a real schedule of the vehicles, and that was actually Ralph who spent a tremendous amount of time to help them build their roll-off schedule. And it wasn't like they didn't know what they had. They knew what they had, and they had data in different places and information, but he really helped them build that program.
Yeah.
So you can add a lot of value.
And so for some of the more reoccurring ones, the departments sort of know what information they need to provide. On some of the new projects or one-offs, so it, you know, it's sort of depends on the department head as to whether they can anticipate. And so the liaisons just sort of provide a initial screen, like obviously it's one person for the committee, they're not answering for the full committee, but they're trying to anticipate, like, I know this is missing, like, for example, photographs, like Ralph's request to sort of physically see the decay of the rust, like that is sort of a typical thing we would ask for. Like if you're gonna be making an argument that is like broken down, you know, show, don't tell is often a good solution.
Right.
So like getting the photographs, you know, getting additional costing, like you'll get a high level quote, but then you're like, no, we'd like to see the full detailed quote. Sometimes the requests come in with like a detailed quote, but no operational explanation, like no context. So it's hard to be like, if you go to the OneDrive and you see a quote and a brief description and you're like, there's no context of like, why is this coming up now? So there's, you'll see in the police department, and in what the schools did last year, they did like a cover memo for each of the projects, sort of providing a little bit of historical context. That's often very helpful, because as a committee, when you're looking at it even before a meeting, you're like, I don't really know what I'm looking at. And then you show up at the meeting with a list of questions that could have been answered by just like literally a a 2-paragraph memo that gave you a little context. So those are the kinds of things that in the past liaisons have just been that first screen and said, you know what, if you do these couple things, I think you'll have a more complete package of information.
Or, for budget purposes, do they need to get 2 quotes, or is the quote just so they can figure out what the budget is, and then when they actually go out to get the product or service they need?
So a lot of times they'll go off a state contract and pull down a quote.
Okay,
And that quote is valid because it's already a state contract, so they really only need one.
okay,
But there are often times where they will need 3 quotes.
yeah,
And they oftentimes supply all 3 quotes.
just for the budget, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we do get a lot of great information.
Yeah.
Over the years, it's gotten better and better. And certainly having the technology to house it all and everybody's got like digital devices and they have programs that they use to manage things, so things are definitely better. But it still, this helps, you know, to insert ourselves. I think ourselves in the other one, this is better, by putting it in the process at the early stages.
And like one of the, like, the reality is when you go in as like liaison, the requests are always going to total more than we have. Like, the schools are gonna come in, I guarantee you, with $1 million of requests. And we will hear the $1 million of requests, but then one of the questions that comes out, not in a liaison conversation, but in a capital budget conversation is like, now can you rank order, like give us your priority? Like, obviously, existing and reoccurring have to happen, but then when you get to new projects, you gotta tell us of these 5 new projects, what's your number 1, you know, through number 5.
So we don't ask them that ahead of time.
We ask them to think about that, and get that ready, because the reality is that we're usually oversubscribed 3 to 6 times. That's a
It
budget.
comes out in the discussion, like they may have one that they believe to be high, but then when we start talking, you know, with them. You know, we uncover other things, and that's happened with the paving program last year. For the school parking lots, and they ended up taking it off the table and saying, yeah, we really do need to go back and do a few more things.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
We don't usually try and call too much at the outset, but having them think through the priority ranking, because it unfortunately always comes down to that in terms of like, it's never 100% of everything that could get done.
Right, and you know, some of the questions, other than the obvious ones we've already talked about, you know, you can always ask about it, are there any grants or things like that they look into, or just be prepared to talk about whether or not they went through that, because sometimes, was it Elder Affairs that had a grant on the van? But we voted, you know, contingent upon when the grant monies come in, that they go back to the stabilization fund, like stuff like that.
And I think in terms of department heads, I think the only department that has a new head this year is Elder Affairs.
She just started.
She just started, okay, so new.
She's new.
She's new. I think all the other
Not new
department,
to Elder Affairs, but new to us.
yes,
So
exactly.
she's familiar with these
Okay,
procedures.
Yeah, so new department in Elder Affairs, superintendent is now, this is her 2nd cycle, so she's. She knows what to expect, and then the rest of the departments, this is. Old hat.
so we listed here, or Katie helped prepare this, of course, and we listed who had what departments last year. So do we want to actually talk about who wants to take which roles right now? Or do you want to think about them?
So I put them down just so people knew, like, we can, it's a new committee and obviously everything is up for grabs. But it was just, I put it down more just so that people sort of knew. There were some that were definitely empty because Corey and Francine have left and we now have Rob and Kathy, so like those are the TBDs, but then everything else can be changed. If somebody has a personal interest in one thing or another, like they're totally welcome.
And it looks like it's generally, is it 2? Everybody has 2?
That's pretty much how it works out.
I think it depends on the the lift.
Yeah.
Recreation, I think one would be sufficient,
Yeah,
right?
No, but I mean,
No,
like,
two departments.
yeah, so
Oh, two departments,
a
yes.
committee member.
Yes,
for two
generally that is
departments.
the case, but you know, honestly, school is the heaviest lift of all.
Mhm.
yeah,
So Katie will definitely wanna have somebody riding tandem with her on that.
yeah.
Other affairs, library, usually maybe pretty small, if they have one thing,
Yeah.
The library has one thing this year.
yeah.
Small house.
Yeah.
It doesn't even really meet the threshold, but we'll talk about that.
And elder affairs, it'll be more just like a meet and greet, like friendly face from capital budget, like.
Like we had two on town hall last year, but probably could survive with one at
Yeah,
this point, because it's pretty well thought out.
Yeah.
Program already. Okay.
Yeah.
So next meeting, do we want to just lock them down?
yeah. So if people wanna think about what
Okay.
liaison position,
Fast. Are
Yeah.
we deciding on this now or?
No,
we don't
gonna
have to
do
do it,
next
like,
week?
well, Ralph's not
Well,
here,
Ralph's
also,
not here, so why don't we just like, next
Okay.
week, be prepared to.
Fine.
yeah, and we'll.
Be part of.
That'll give us plenty of time to sort of, because as you said, like, the goal is to try and have people's first pass by November 15th.
Right.
I think last year, we sort of did liaison meetings in like December, early January, and then like we really got rocking and rolling like in the new year in terms of like meeting on specific requests. We could be ahead of schedule. It's always good to be
Should be
ahead.
ahead of schedule, because I feel like we're rushing towards annual town meeting. We always think we have a ton of time, and then all of a sudden we have no
And
time.
then holidays get in there.
No,
It's crazy.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And there's always something that like jumps out of the closet.
Always,
Like-
always. Usually find that out like March 15th.
Well, and to be fair, like, we are gonna be revisiting public safety again, so in a weird way, like us getting this underway and moving along we're gonna need time come March to revisit public safety, so it probably does make sense.
Yeah,
to-
so I would just recommend that for police and fire, that Kathy has a position,
Yeah,
a seat
I'm
at
just
the
gonna
table,
say-
because she's the liaison for that committee,
Already got.
so just makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
Okay,
You're in too many places.
yeah, I'm happy to like reduce my portfolio for sure.
Okay. Committee member updates, I think we've kind of already covered that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Next meeting agenda. And remote meeting format, I mean, right now, are you guys okay with the way this is? If people feel,
I'm one of the old timers. I like the in-person meetings, but I figured out how to participate by Zoom after a couple of failed shots, but
You were pro last year, pro.
stop torturing me. Terrible.
I mean, I like the Zoom format, for sort of the annual budget cycle stuff. I mean, the reality is a lot of times our people aren't coming physically, like the staff members aren't coming physically to our meetings. So they're gonna be Zoom anyway. So I personally think for like the annual budget cycle stuff, it's just a matter of convenience for me personally. But when it comes to more tricky subjects, or when we're doing like that final round of votes, I personally,
think we should be together.
we should be together for those, and Michelle, I know you've got.
No, I agree with you for being in person for those larger votes and the larger conversations of the public safety building. But during the annual town meeting, one-off requests from each department, it's easier to share the data through, an online platform,
Right.
because they're all
I
coming in,
understand
they're coming in online, so it's
Right.
sometimes easier.
I agree with that approach.
So let's, for our regular budget cycle stuff, let's do them Zoom, which will mean like November, December, January, we'll be doing Zoom format, and then when we get to sort of voting and back to public safety, we'll do in person.
That makes sense.
And during the, this period, the school normally does offer a walkthrough, like prior to presenting all of their requests, they often offer a walkthrough, which is an opportunity to, in person, see the things that they are going to be presenting to you, like you did for the public safety building. So those things have to participate in.
Yeah, almost any department, like if it like. If there's something that you like literally wanna see, like, the town departments are happy to
Yeah.
take you on a little tour. At like. With the library masonry stuff, I stopped and I sat in the parking lot and I looked, I was like, wow, it really is lifting. Right
above the door.
Right above the door, like, right above the book drop, oh my god, like, so like, I do drive
Yeah.
around town during that period, it is helpful to sort of get in the building or get to see some of the stuff, that's why, like, that's one of the reasons I always like to see photos in the packets, because like,
Yeah.
sometimes it's not easier to go see it, but a lot of the time, the town departments are happy to.
Okay, so
Okay.
let's start it going forward.
Okay.
So
So,
next meeting, you mentioned harbor master and police, and what was the third?
Harbor master, police and library, but I need to speak with the library because this doesn't really meet the threshold. I understand it's a larger ask, but it doesn't really meet the threshold. So we'll see what they want to do. The book-
Dollar amount threshold or?
Yeah, the dollar amount. So they're looking for a book drop, just high level, looking for a book drop. It's really about a $9,000 ask, but they're escalating it to $11,000. I guess for miscellaneous.
And what's the minimum amount, 10?
It's 10,
They just don't wanna take it out of their operating budget.
Embed it.
Yeah.
First.
I'm just looking at the request and I think we may have another solution for them. Since we cleaned up the RTF, we may have a solution up there that we can just kind of change and put over.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, so harbor master and police would definitely be on the
Yeah.
agenda.
And when you're saying their requests for fiscal year 27,
Mhm. Which you said already.
Their annual OneDrive, yeah.
okay. I had other,
And the liaison.
a liaison discussion. I had,
We're gonna go over these.
sorry, I'm like blanking.
That's all right. We all
The
know
re-
those
the
moments.
repurposed articles were on my list, the motions were on my list for next meeting. And then also just a standing public safety update. There's also, I also had pure analysis deliverable update on my list too.
So do you want to wait for annual town meeting until we get through special town meeting? Since Chris is gonna come present all the motions theoretically on Monday?
To wait until after special town meeting to do harbor and police. Yeah,
That's up to you, it's just a suggestion, I don't know how long Chris is gonna take to present his motions. I don't know how many questions he'll have.
I think
The
it'll be-
motions will be
Ready
ready.
that, I mean, it's no mad rush.
I mean, it sort of depends on what people's availability looks like in. So we've got special town meeting, if you turn the corner, we've got special town meeting on the 3rd. Which is that Monday, and then there are 2 Mondays before Thanksgiving, the 10th and the 17th.
Okay.
Do we wanna try and do like the 3rd and the 17th and give ourselves the week of the 10th off?
The third special town meeting.
The 3rd, we're gonna be at special town meeting. Give ourselves the week of the 10th off and then do a meeting on the 17th and start with harbor and police on the 17th? Or do you wanna try and do some of that?
The only thing about that is then the next weekend is Thanksgiving week.
Yep.
And then we'd be on and then off and then, you know what I mean? I might prefer the 10th and the 17th and then skip Thanksgiving week instead, do it that way.
Yeah, that's fine. What do you think, Rob?
Sounds good to me. I like the proposal.
I'm fine with that too.
yeah,
So 11-3 will all be at special town meeting, and then we'll have capital budget on the 10th and the 17th, okay?
Mhm.
Via Zoom.
Via Zoom, okay.
Perfect.
And
And
then,
by then we may have more requests as well. So as they come in, I can alert you, and if you want to put them on the agenda, you can.
Okay.
okay, so that gives us, we have special time, but that gives us a little time to, right, so that means we're not gonna do, when are we gonna do the assignment of the liaisons? When?
No, I
No,
was proposing that the 27th.
Okay,
It just, the way it's gonna roll, Susan, we're gonna
yeah,
have.
that way we
we're
know,
gonna-
and then we have some time.
Yep.
Some follow time.
Yeah.
There was such a thing,
Exactly.
to get started on that.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. On 7 minutes.
We have one set of minutes. Which is from September 29th. Chris, this is one that you were absent on, so you get to skip voting.
Yes, no, I've seen them.
I think they're accurate.
Is that your motion to approve, Rob?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Second.
Go to name and go to descending. By person. Budget meeting. Oh, Is 2020. Yeah. Actually, sorry, I put them in the 20th, sorry. Like what? Sorry.
You put it in-
I put him in the current.
Oh, okay,
Like,
I
what-
got you, you put it in the date.
I put in the current meeting.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like,
yeah. Okay. Just put it in the search.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The motion and seconded, all right.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Rob motioned
Rob?
and I seconded.
Kathy seconded?
Yeah.
Kathy's very efficient tonight.
Yeah,
All right.
All in favor?
I, Katie Dugan.
I, Kathy Forrest.
I, Chris Peich.
I, Rob Casemeyer.
But Chris wasn't here.
Yeah.
Chris, we're gonna strike you
You
because you weren't,
here.
Oh, shoot,
I, Susan.
I should be.
you should be stricken, but we'll, yes, so 4-0.
All right then.
Awesome.
It is 7:51 and we are adjourned.
Woo-hoo.
Good night, everyone.
Night, thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
Rob.
Rob.
Night.
Hope you feel better.
Yeah.